We're back for Your Ears Only. I'm David Alpern.
I'm Eddie Robinson with this quote from the news. Stale and moss-covered. I don't think we need to name any names. That was derision of mainstream Republicans in general, and probably John McCain in particular, by GOP Senator and presidential prospect Rand Paul of Kentucky. At the Conservative Political Action Conference, McCain earlier dismissed Paul as a wacko bird. Another presidential possibility, Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, said the party didn't need any new ideas. The one they have, he said, is called America, and it still works. Also prominent were Mitt Romney, mercurial millionaire Donald Trump, and former vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin. Among the notably uninvited, popular GOP Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey and Bob McDonnell of Virginia. Now this.
The foreigners, NATO, the Americans have all come with the permission of the UN Security Council's mandate. They've started this war, but they didn't start it in the right place. They should be in the terrorists' bases. The bombs that exploded in Kabul and Khost didn't show the Taliban's power to the Americans. They were doing a service for America.
Afghan President Hamid Karzai has always been a maddening, maybe medicated political personality. But his anti-American rhetoric reached new heights last week, accusing the United States of collaborating with Taliban terror attacks to create support for continuing U.S. military presence and influence. The American commander in Afghanistan, General Joseph Dunford Jr., responded with orders for stepped-up security against what he saw as an increased risk to Western troops from militants and Afghan security forces themselves.
As the scheduled pullout of U.S. forces continues, the Afghan society, psychology, and politics that Karzai attempts to orchestrate will become at least as important as the military balance that remains. This is an area of special interest to Susan Froetschel, a journalist, novelist, and analyst for YaleGlobal Online. Her latest book on the hardships of Muslim women is Fear of Beauty, from 7th Street Prometheus Publishers. And for Your Ears Only, Susan Froetschel is on the line now. Welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
Whatever Karzai's mental condition, we have to admit that America has proved a fair-weather friend in the past, turning away after reversal of the Soviet occupation, paving the way for al-Qaeda, in fact.
Yes, that's true, and the United States is withdrawing again. But NATO and the United States have done a lot of work there that's been appreciated, especially the work from the provincial reconstruction teams, trying to introduce new techniques of agriculture, provide technical assistance, health clinics, education facilities. And Afghans have seen an alternative, future. And it's up to them to decide if they want to continue in those directions. And this is the outcome that will be looked for by the international community and NGOs and diplomats around the world.
Let's get some facts on the table. How large is the Taliban force in Afghanistan today versus the number of Afghan security forces that we've built up before we leave?
The last good estimate I read was reported by Reuters in February 2012, and they estimated the number of Taliban fighters at 25,000 at most, and that's in a country of 30 million people. And previous reports have always said that the vast majority of them are in it for economic reasons. It's a job. They're not really the hardcore jihadist types. So about the Afghan National Army, they've achieved their recruitment goal of 195,000 troops, and the National Police has 149,000. And there's others. There's several thousand Air Force. There's Special Ops, and the police and security have about 25,000. So it's a total of more than 350,000. The force should be on the official Afghan side.
Even if the Taliban can't retake control of the national government, can you imagine them asserting control in specific areas, either through military means or the kind of political settlement that many Western experts support?
There's the problems of geography. There's uneven infrastructure. Some communities are very isolated. The biggest challenge is the low literacy rates and high fragmentation. And yes, all that means that some communities are going to succumb to the pressures. Fundamentalists, in Islam they're throughout the world, and they're trying to get power, and they're not going to give up.
What happens in those areas to the progress of women in terms of education and rights?
They're going to be marginalized. They'll be pushed out of the schools, and free thought and dissent won't be allowed among any, in the populace, men or women alike. The low literacy rates will persist, and the people who can leave will try and get away from those communities. This has happened in the past with the big waves of Afghans. Hopefully, the Afghans will realize that alternatives do exist. Hopefully, they can resist and convince entire communities to resist.
To what degree do you see the new technology affecting the Afghan future? It makes people more aware of other ways of life, as you suggested, could provide at-home education for women, maybe set the stage for organizing a new politics, though that hasn't proved a panacea in the Arab Spring generally.
That is one of the hopeful signs. There are huge opportunities that were not available in the mid-1990s when the Taliban took control. We see the power of globalization in communications time and time again, as one photo or one video is posted online by an individual, and it quickly rallies global support. And then the other thing is there is also amazing new ways, to analyze large sets of data, and the military's been doing this, for example, with GIS mapping software. And they use this software, they look at data from, at the province level or even at the local community level, and, you can put this data on the map and instantly see where, there might be different correlations between, say, water availability and public health. And this allows analysts and government officials to immediately know, better than ever before, how to target certain areas for enforcement or for, security and that sort of thing. And probably the best thing about, new technology is that the days of doublespeak are over, that, any politician can take one position, today in front of an audience, and then tomorrow he takes the opposite position in front of a different audience. Those days are over. Politicians around the world are discovering this, and so too will the politicians in Afghanistan.
Susan Froetschel is a journalist, novelist, and analyst for YaleGlobal Online. Her latest book on the hardships of Muslim women is Fear of Beauty, from 7th Street Prometheus Publishers.
Quote from the news, "You shouldn't have to pay $50,000 to hear what a candidate really thinks." That was Scott Prouty, a previously unidentified bartender, on why he shot and released secret video of Mitt Romney telling wealthy donors that 47% of voters felt entitled to be dependent on government, a major nail in the coffin of Romney's 2012 presidential campaign.
Next, the debate over a book urging American women to lean in. For your ears only.